Hello,
Hey, what's going on?
what's going on? Taylor, how are you? Rick,
I'm
how are you?
super.
Mojo
Awesome.
Monday. Can we get Taylor pinned? Uh, Steven will get you pinned here in a second, Taylor. So industry update. I think I said Mojo. I get confused. It's all on Monday. Here we go. So before I put the stats up, what what do we feel like? What are the feelings people are saying? What are we hearing? What do you think's going on just from a place of feeling?
Hey, Brett, are you talking about the market in general or what? I'm sorry, can you explain
Everything, yeah.
everything? So from a market perspective, you know, like my listings, I'm feeling like there's like 50% less traffic of buyers. So buyers are kind of stepping back and saying, whoa, I think I'm going to wait, or they're dropping out. So that's what I'm feeling. And it's not just on one listing, it's on multiple listings. And on the buyer side, I have an opportunity now to see homes without them being under contract before I get to the door. So
Yeah,
it's kind of tape. The way I explain it to my clients is we're taking 1 foot out of insanity and we're still in crazy. So,
I
but
get
it's a
that.
noticeable difference.
Perfect. So the velocity is probably a good word here, is slowed down a little bit, but not the actual transactions yet.
And
Meaning,
I hate to use slowdown because it has a negative connotation. You know what I mean? Just from an optics perspective. So I'm kind of sensitive on using slowdown because people take that and they feed on it. It's like, oh, the whole economy is slowing down. Well, that's not true. you know,
I
it's not a
gotcha.
bad thing. You know.
All right. Thank you, Ken. Somebody else. What are we feeling?
So I took a contracts class and the attorney said that there's more foreclosures coming on.
Okay, so maybe that's starting to just become part of the vernacular again, which it's kind of been one of those words we hadn't used in a long time, right?
That's interesting because I actually just left closing on a $1.2 million foreclosure. And closing on a foreclosure is like, you never have that at all. So your timing of bringing that up is impeccable for me.
Absolutely. So anyway, all right, well, let's jump into some numbers and see what the market's showing us here. In Fulton County, and actually all the big counties last week, we kind of talked about this huge dip in closings. And it was kind of freaky because we went from like 400 closings a week down to 200 in Fulton County. And if you look across the county in DeKalb, we had a big dip in closings. In Cobb, we had a big dip. In Gwinnett, we had a big dip. And you can see that and go, wow, is that a tale to be told? Or as we talked about last week, sometimes there's just odd scheduling in calendars where Mother's Day weekend, Easter holiday, people just didn't close houses that week. And it was a really good reminder that statistics are better looked at across a period or a timeline, not a short window of time, because sometimes there's just anomalies in statistics, right? Rick, you've got some experience here. What would you add?
I mean, you're really looking for trends, and anomalies do occur based on the timing of the reporting cycle. So you're exactly right. You have to be careful assigning value to a 1 week span.
Yeah.
Even 30 days for that matter.
Well, here's what I want to make sure we talk about this week. If you look at Fulton County, there's 732 active listings in the MLS as of this morning. Thank you to Steven, our cyberbacker, that pulls these numbers every Monday morning. But if you look at this and you follow my pointer across, you got to go back to October last year to get anywhere close to the same level of inventory that we have today. I think that's a really good sign. And you got to also compare that conversation with closings. We've closed the most homes we've closed since December last year in a 1-week period. So it's not that we're selling less. We do actually have more inventory coming on the market, which I think speaks a little bit to what Ken was talking about, in the sense that, hey, maybe there's a little bit less demand on the velocity of how many people are fighting for each home. And he's actually able to get buyers into houses and they're not already sold before he even gets there. So what I hear in that messaging, and we can go through the different counties here, is opportunity. That pipeline of people you've had in your back pocket, or maybe got frustrated 3 months ago or 6 months ago or a year ago, what appropriate timing to get them back into the game right now. They got opportunity where rates they've gone up, but they're still going up, right? But there's opportunity to get people into houses right now. Any comments?
I mean, we were due for some effect, regarding the economy, and consumer confidence is the ripple effect of what's happening with rising interest rates and the stock market volatility. There are people who are a little less aggressive, who are going to probably hit the pause button, which, to your point, creates opportunities for buyers.
Perfect. The cab came down just a little bit in inventory, but it's still really high comparatively. Same thing with the closings. Their closings picked back up from a week ago. Cobb County inventory, 455 active in Cobb County. You got to go back. Actually, I don't even have that's the highest I've got tracked in active inventory in Cobb County right now, which has kind of been a hotbed for the institutional investors. So that's a good thing in Cobb County. Gwinnett, look at that. 557 active. We don't even have it on since we've been tracking with that many active. So I think those are good signs. And I see that as opportunity to get people into some houses. Any comments, guys?
I would just add that the average days on market over the last few years has been so few that, a couple of extra weeks to sell a home or a month feels like, eternity, but that a balanced market where buyers and sellers are equally represented and capable of winning is 5 to 6 months. So again, it feels, in some ways, it probably feels a bit dramatic, out on the street, but we're just moving towards a slightly more normalized experience.
There you go. So the big news this week, Taylor, Mariah Carey purchased a Sandy Springs mansion for $5.5 million. What does this mean to us? Like, okay, I get it's a news headline, but I think that there's a real story around celebrities and celebrities buying real estate in our city, and what that means for destination and the movie industry and the music industry and behind the scenes. Is it just a cool factor in a headline story, or is there an actual business undertone to this?
Well, I think Atlanta's been already on the up and up for celebrities wanting to move in for both the movie industry, the entertainment industry, sports industry. We've already seen this. It's not something that's super new. I think that it's going to continue happening more and more as time goes by. But it's cool that she's moved into town. I don't see it as that big of a surprise right now.
I don't either. It just hit the headlines, so I figured I'd throw it up there. All right.
Well, and she did own a house. She did own a home that she sold in 2019 in Buckhead. So she's obviously had a long-standing relationship with Atlanta. So that's cool.
There you go. This is a slide that's come out of the National Association of Realtors economic update in April. And I want to give interpretation. I talked a little bit about this last week, but I think it's worthy of mentioning again, is if you look at the 2022 forecast, the National Association of Realtors says nationally, we're probably going to sell 9% less houses in 2022 than we did in 2021. However, the price appreciation is going to go up 8%. So if the net effect is we're basically going to break even on the dollar volume of real estate that was sold in the previous year. Then the bigger story is the 2023 forecast, which if you understand the US government, they want our price appreciation on an annual basis to be pretty much leveled out at around 4% a year. So all this conversation around interest rates and getting a curb on inflation and all this economic stuff is to try to get us back to a normal economy, normal as they would define the housing economy as a 4% a year annual increase in pricing. So what I'm reading in this is we had a hyper abundance of real estate during the pandemic. And then in 2022, you could say we're paying the Pied Piper a little bit for all the abundance we sold during the pandemic. But all it's doing is just resetting our market to where they're predicting us to have a normal year in 2023. And I think that we're feeling that a little bit. It's a little different of a year, not a bad year, not a good year. It's just a different year. And we're still trying to figure out what life looks like after this pandemic, not only personally, but also in business. And I think this is what their predictions are. I'll admit it's a prediction or a forecast. However, I tend to see this playing out. What do y'all make of it?
If
I
they're
think
9% fewer unit sales, though, that means there's 9% opportunity that won't be captured by agents. So even though the price appreciation offsets it, you have to be the one to get your unfair share and counterbalance that.
It's a unit game.
It is a unit game.
And real estate always has been a unit game, but Rick, why? Like you've understood that for years.
Well, I mean, for a number of reasons, but one, it's, referrals, it's market presence, it's, especially on the listing side. I mean, there are variables that favor people who win in the unit game. I mean, if you only sell 3 $10 million houses a year and you lose one, it's incredibly detrimental to your bottom line.
Right.
So I don't know if I answered your question, but
No. I just think it's the biggest snapshot perspective of what our markets look like right now. So,
and then you overlay the increase in real estate agents that are actively participating in our industry. They're still coming from real estate schools. And so again, it's about getting your unfair share. And the sheer number of agents that are licensed in Georgia and nationally, I don't know that it's peaking, but if the market shifts, it'll probably pull some people out of the market, which is a gift. But Gary would tell you there's a lagging reality to how long it takes them to stop, putting forth effort to take your next door neighbor or their cousin who's also in your database before they decide they're no longer going to participate on a part-time basis or less, successful strategy.
Yeah.
Somebody else was going to share something. I jumped in. I apologize.
I think was it you, Ken?
Yeah, it was Ken. Yeah. So, I mean, what I was going to say is, a little bit different than where you were going with your comment, but was, as we shift, we have to shift with our pricing of our houses as well, because, we've been in this, we're wired now to be in this insane market and, price properties higher than what we normally would. So instead of looking at like median and below to price a house, I'm looking at max, right? And saying, well, hell, I can probably even go over the max because I know the market, I know the area, I know that neighborhood, whatever. Well, so now we have to kind of throttle that back and to say, well, the max isn't the buy. That's the market is not absorbing that. So we have to be sensitive to and kind of rewire ourselves on the pricing.
Go.
That's a good point.
That's
a good point. And as demand goes down and the information around inflation and interest rates continues, It might also kind of thwart some of that exuberant offering, where you're going to win that
That's
house
right.
at any cost. So it will eventually ripple into the average sales price appreciation figure too.
Of course.
That's right.
And here's just more data, if you will. This talks about inflation spiking worse, not really expected, 8.3% in April, but have surging prices finally peaked. So here's what you need to know is the rate of inflation in April slowed for the first time in 8 months. So you're always trying to catch the mountain climbing up and then the crest of the mountain, and it comes over the crest of the mountain. And everybody tries to time the market, which never works, right? Whether you're in the stock market or the real estate market, or I guess the Fed's trying to time inflation. But here's what I see in this. The Fed's number one goal right now is to get inflation to come back down. I mean, you don't have to be an economist to understand that. And they've been cranking interest rates to do just that. And for the first time, it looks like inflation has crested the mountain and actually made a dip back down. And I see that as a good sign. I think that means the Fed believes that whatever policy they're bringing to the table is starting to work because they're starting to pull inflation back down. And I think that's one sign. If I jump over to the 10-year Treasury note and you pull it out, I guess you could pull it out 3 months, you actually see that Treasury note came back down a little bit over the last day or so. So it just goes to show that everything rises and falls and nothing's a constant. And from an economic standpoint, really capitalism or the government being involved in our economics of our livelihood, their whole goal is trying to keep us at constant, right? Or keep us in normal range. And then a war in Ukraine or a pandemic or a supply chain, it throws us out of line. But at the end of the day, they're really always trying to just pull us back down to this constant normal. So you see things go up, you see things come back down. This is interesting because I'm not really sure it translated to interest rates coming back down a little bit. But maybe it will in the coming weeks. We'll see. I don't see it happening. But anything y'all to add on inflation or 10-year Treasury?
Well, step one's flattening it. And step two is to actually reduce inflation. 8, 7, 6, even 5% is not a sustainable figure compounded for quality of life and cost of living. So they've got to continue to work to whittle it down. Again, 1 month doesn't tell the whole story, but it's definitely positive news. And it looks like stabilization. And what I've read this week was that the Fed's kind of subtly committed to probably a 0.5 point raise each of the next 2 months.
Yeah.
So there is going to be a ripple effect in that regard. But again, it was climbing rapidly. So that's a good sign.
Yeah. And, I made an analogy in a previous conversation. I said, at one point in my life, when I bought my first car, I remember being super payment sensitive, going, I can't afford anything over $300 a month. I got to make sure my payment is $300 a month. And then if I were to buy a car today, I'd probably buy the car that I wanted, right? Like I would go after the car I wanted and I wouldn't be as payment sensitive around the car that I wanted to purchase. People buy real estate the same way. There is a percentage of buyers that are very payment conscious. But there is a percentage of buyers that are buying the house that they want in the school district they want, and they're not as sensitive to payment. And that means they're not as sensitive to the interest rate as maybe a payment conscious person might be. So there's different perspectives and different emotional levels people give or receive around interest rates rising and things along those lines. So I don't necessarily see as interest rates going up necessarily slowing down the demand in housing. I think it'll slow it down slightly, but I don't think it's going to cause it to come to a halt by any means. And one of the conversations has been there's such a backlog of millennials find themselves a lot in the first time home buyer category, but even bigger than that, there's a backlog of people that wanted to buy real estate that the building community hasn't built the inventory over the last number of years to keep up with it. So there's still this high demand of people that want to buy real estate. And I think it's going to insulate our industry from any kind of recession or raised interest rates. I actually think we'll take a little dip here and there, but we're going to be pretty strong going forward. Anybody else have a perspective around that?
I agree with that, Brett. I do also think that we're going to see less settling because like we had talked about just a second ago, everyone's trying to get in, try to buy a house. Doesn't really matter if they like it or not. They just want to get in because who knows if there's going to be a house in 2-3 days.
They're buying ugly houses, Taylor?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Okay. So,
yeah, there's going to be less settling, I believe, and it's going to be an interesting market to see what's going to happen in the next few months or even the next year.
So that's good point. So maybe we should polish up on our staging skills, our vendor list, get your house ready, get it painted ahead of time. All those conversations that we might have just not had to do over the last couple of years may become relevant again really soon.
Mm-hmm.
And on the buy side, it allows you the opportunity to consult, to level up your consulting and talk about, good, better, and best. And is it worth waiting? And is it worth paying a premium just to get into a house today? And what areas are more vulnerable to market shifts if they're in a sustained fashion and last longer than a short season? And you brought up a good point, Brett, that, the short-term interest rates or variable rate interest may come into vogue again. I would imagine that it would for that sect of the community that's, payment conscious, and, ARMs are going to become, and you can still win the battle short term if your long-term perspective is optimistic. And to your point, I see no reason why it wouldn't be. But again, it goes back to consulting and an opportunity to level up your value to your clients on both sides, buy and sell.
There you go. And in the last
Right, and
article,
also,
go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry. And Rick, on that same note as well, with the rising interest rates and continued rising appreciation, it makes the rental to purchase conversation an easier conversation. It's like, rental rates are increasing as well. So instead of paying $3,200 a month for, a single family house on the west side, then why aren't we buying?
Perfect.
I'd be curious to see if rental rates are going up faster than the payment on the same type property, right? Like, are rates going up, causing payments to go up this percentage versus the percentage of rate increase on rental rate, right?
Well, realize institutional REITs and large investment companies and groups that do these syndications, they could be vulnerable to short-term rate changes too, if they're hedged against the prime rate, or depending on their lending source and whether it recalibrates or resets. Need as much as market may also dictate a push for rental rate increases.
There you go.
And they've been buying at a really short, there's a lot of these investors are buying at 3% and 4% caps, which doesn't create a lot of headroom for a shift in either the cost of money or the rental rates not going up to accommodate that.
Yeah. So I found this article and it was kind of fun because we have talked before on this industry update around, hey, how would you sell real estate if there was no MLS? Meaning, how would we go find inventory? How would we match buyers and sellers if we didn't have the actual MLS? And in a way, we kind of made fun of the answers going, oh yeah, we go do all the old school stuff like farming, print marketing, door knocking, circle prospecting. And he made this article that says it's a comprehensive guide to finding inventory in today's market. And if you read here, it's go to your database, your CRM, go through your phone, work your referral network, circle prospecting, farming, door knocking, open houses, expired listing, FISBOs. And I'm going, man, it really is back to the basics, right? Like that's how we sell real estate. And I want to give an opinion, and I'll give it an asterisk with an opinion. I'll take anybody else's opinion. I think social media is a beautiful thing for our industry, but I also think it's hurt us in some regard, meaning we relied too much on social media and stopped doing some of the tried and true ways of developing real estate business. And I just want to encourage people to, not in this context, it's, hey, how do I go find inventory that's not in the MLS, which is the same thing that I was saying around, hey, how would you sell real estate if there was no MLS? But I really think it needs to be a reminder that there's a date in the future that real estate's not going to be as easy as it's been in the last couple of years. And the agents that understand the tried and true ways of building a business are going to thrive. And this is a good reminder to that. My opinion, I'm off the high horse. Anybody else have an opinion?
I think social media is great when it comes to trying to reach as many people as possible. But when it comes to creating real comprehensive relationships with clients who actually are trying to get into the market, I don't think that it's really as beneficial as people are relying on it to be, only because it is that fishing tool. You throw your net out, you try to grab as many fish as possible, but how many of those fish are you actually going to bring into your home and have as a pet? I don't know. I just don't think that it's great for building those really deep relationships that people need to have in order to have these clients, especially for referral business coming forward.
There you go.
Well, and Taylor, I agree. I think the agents that are going to continue to be successful in the future, it's fundamental. It's about building those deep relationships and having your client feel loved and feel, you add value to their life. So without that, then you're toast.
100%.
And you've got your core advocates that are always going to work with you. It's really that gap potential inside of your sphere of influence is where the money's made or protected if the market shifts. And what conversations do you need to have now so that the day that, when the day comes that they're ready to make a decision, you're the first person they think of. And to think that social media alone will really maintain a relationship is probably a mistake.
There you go. All right. There's your industry update. Happy Monday.